Welcome to the Matt Waller Podcast, where we look at success at the intersection of technology, logistics, supply chain, retail, and CPG, also known as the retail value chain. I want to clarify that this podcast is distinct from my responsibilities as a professor in the Sam M. Walton College of Business. Nonetheless, it aligns with my aspiration to provide practical insights to professionals and business by showcasing companies and people that can enhance your ability to manage, lead, and strategize and market effectively in the retail value chain. Before we dive into today's exciting episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, New Road Capital Partners. New Road invests in proven technologies, services, and products that serve unmet needs in the marketplace. They look for companies in supply chain and logistics, as well as consumer-oriented companies. For more information, go to newroadcp.com. I would also like to disclose that I am a strategic advisor to New Road. I'd also like to recognize podcastvideos.com for the services they provide for these podcasts. I'm very pleased with their services. And now, without further ado, let's get into the exciting episode. I have with me today Uriel Brison, who is the Chief Product Officer for a company known as WaveBL out of Tel Aviv, Israel. It's a really interesting conversation. When you look at the size of global trade, it's over $20 trillion. It's an unimaginable number. And what's amazing about it is most of it's going through maritime container shipping. And it's hard to believe, but a lot of the transactions are done with paper, especially the bill of lading. And WaveBL has a platform that digitizes this process with the bill of lading. And it makes a huge difference in terms of time, accuracy, sustainability. There's all kinds of advantages. I remember reading about this a long time ago. I can't remember when, but it seems like it was 20 or 30 years ago that, it was coming. So it's taken a long time to become a reality. WaveBL is working with some of the biggest ocean carriers in the world to drive this change. And, I was really impressed with Uriel's background. He has so much experience in the high-tech industry, and he's been with a lot of different companies, a lot of different roles. He's been a co-founder. He really understands the application of technology to business, and you'll see that when you hear him speak. And I think the other thing that's really interesting about his background is that he's if you actually look at the companies he's worked for, he has a broad view of high-tech applications in business. So one of the things that WaveBL is doing in their platform, in addition to simply digitizing the bill of lading, I say simply, it's no simple task because of anytime you try to do something new, there's a lot of pressure to not change. And so they face that, Uriel's faced that in many different industries he's worked in. But in addition to that, they are using blockchain technology within their platform, which helps in many different ways that you'll learn about. So you may be familiar with blockchain technology. By listening to this podcast, you'll hear an example of how it's being applied in maritime container shipping globally. And the other thing I would say is that some of you may have heard there's a book out there called Startup Nation, and it talks about how, Israel, as being a very small nation in terms of population, surrounded by many enemies, they actually produce more high-tech startups than many other countries that you would think must be producing more. They are one of the leading countries in the world for creating startups that turn out to be successful. I first read this book I don't know when it was. It seems like it was 10 years ago. It's called Startup Nation. So if you read that book, or if you've read that book, then you will hear in this podcast an example of one of the companies that has succeeded this because when you deal with high-tech startups, you have a lot of failures early on, and then a few percolate to the top and succeed. This is an example. So Tel Aviv University is where Uriel went to school, and Uriel is an example of someone who has become a high-tech startup founder and participant in startups. But the thing that really sets aside Tel Aviv University in this regard is that it's number 2 in the world for graduating people who wind up becoming founders of unicorns. And a unicorn is a high-tech company that becomes worth over $1 billion. So this is not easy to do. And again, keep in mind, Tel Aviv is a relatively small university and a relatively small country, and they're number 2 in the world for producing founders, that create high-tech startups that become unicorns. Thank you, Uriel, for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Uriel, I'd love to talk a little bit about, before we get into too many of the details, just a little bit about some concepts, because I think that most of the listeners may not fully understand even the basic concepts of a letter of credit and a bill of lading, which I think are 2 key concepts in what you're going to be talking about today. So would you mind talking a little about that from an ocean and air perspective?
Absolutely. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for having the opportunity to join you here on this podcast. I think this is, I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion. So the bill of lading is actually a very old document. You can see bills of lading that have been used for hundreds of years, for centuries. Almost, we see examples, and I think the earliest examples are in the 15th century. So this is a very old document. And the idea is very simple. Basically, you have somebody who has merchandise that they want to ship to another location, and then you have someone else, potentially across an ocean or sea, that needs to receive that merchandise. And you need a way to make sure that the merchandise is delivered and then that payment is made for those goods. And since these locations are far away and they're usually under different jurisdictions, so different legal systems, there had to come into existence a certain methodology which would allow the trade to take place and compensation to be paid for the goods that have been transferred. And this is where the bill of lading originated. I think bill of lading is just its old archaic English for a bill of loading, right? So you load the goods on the ship, and then the ship goes somewhere else, and you need to get payment, but you're not there, right? So the bill of lading is actually the document of title to those goods. You give it to the ship's captain or somebody you trust, who might be on that ship or maybe on a different ship, going through a different route. And then he would be responsible for transferring that document, which is a document of title that entitles someone to take those goods at the port of destination. And then at the port of destination, only somebody with this document can then retrieve the goods, and the person you trust with this document is responsible for getting payment for that delivery. So for that shipment. So it's a mechanism for making sure that a business transaction for goods, which is taking place between 2 very distant locations. So today, you can take a flight and fly almost everywhere in the world, but in like, let's say a century ago, you could probably be trading with someone for years and never have met them or even spoken to them because, you would be in the United States and they might be in Europe and you wouldn't be able to cross the ocean or it would be very difficult and dangerous. So the entire interaction, the entire business process would be done with these documents of title. And that's sort of the history of the bill of lading.
And also, just for context, when you look at a letter of credit where basically the bank is guaranteeing that the buyer will get paid, there's a lot of manual processes involved in that, and there's couriers that are involved. It's a long process. And so when you're talking about global trade, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these numbers, but when you look at global trade, the vast majority of it goes by ocean carriage. Only like 10% goes by air carriage. Yes. And so certainly the air carriage piece of this is too fast for a letter of credit to be effective. And then you've got of the ocean carriage, some maybe about half of it is short ocean, half of it's long ocean shipping. And so letters of credit are used primarily in the long ocean shipping, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So there are two things. You have the bill of lading, which is the sort of the main document for doing for trading, for freight and ocean maritime trade, and it needs to be in place in order for you to be able to perform the shipment. A letter of credit is optional. It means that you have banks sort of in between the exporter and the importer, or the shipper and the consignee, if to use the jargon, and they become the ones who guarantee that the transaction takes place and that all the requirements have been fulfilled, and they then allow the transfer of the money to take place. So you have the bank sort of guaranteeing the authenticity of the entire process. It's not necessary to have a letter of credit. I believe the current statistics are, if I remember this correctly, that about 20% of maritime trading has banks sort of negotiating the trade or certifying it, and the other 80% is done directly between the shipper and the consignee, and there you only have a bill of lading.
Great. So, and also just to give people, again, before we get into the details, the size of what's going on. If you look at global trade, it's around, I think it's over 20 billion.
Oh, it's much more than that. It's just...
or 20 trillion. 20.
Yeah, it's in the trillion.
Yeah, I think it's around 20 trillion.
Yeah, so everything we trade, everything that's being traded around the world is, like you said, between 80 and 90% is goes through the oceans, right? So air freight is expensive. It's quicker, but it's expensive, and you would use that for very specific items that you need to have transferred very quickly, or very light items, papers, documents, and maybe some medicine that needs to be transferred very quickly. But the rest of global trade is done with there's some trains and trucks, if it's inside Europe or the United States, but most of international trade is done by ships, and it's everything. It's like if you go to your local supermarket, there's a good chance that 80% of the items you see on shelves have been shipped in from somewhere.
Yeah. So, but I just wanted to give people a little bit of an idea of some of the documents we might be talking about and the size of this this problem. But now, so if you wouldn't mind, explain a little bit about how the WaveBL platform works and what are the main features and benefits to the users.
So WaveBL, which is the company we work for, is a pioneer in the area of electronic bills of lading. So bills of lading, as we said earlier, have been used for hundreds of years, and they are the document that guarantees that the merchandise goes from the shipper via sea freight, via a ship, to the consignee, to the importer on the other side of the ocean or in another country. And those even to this day, most of these transactions are still transacted on paper. So you would have an actual bill, which is a document. It's a document of titles, right? So it entitles you to receive the merchandise, and you stamp it and you give it to a courier, an actual at FedEx, and you send that document, that piece of paper, to the port of destination, and then somebody has to present that piece of paper and surrender it to the ocean liner and receive the goods. And that's it's in a way, well, it's a very inefficient way of transacting. Paper is a very poor medium for transferring information, for lack of other terms. It's paper can get lost. Sometimes it's sent to the wrong place. It can get stolen. There's counterfeiting that can be done. It's and it takes a long time, especially when you mention the shorter shipping lines. Sometimes the documents arrive after the actual cargo, and then you have to wait, and you have to pay warehouse charges and port charges and so forth. So it's been recognized for quite a time now that bills of lading need to be digitized. Like every other industry, things are no longer being done on paper; they're being done through computers and network systems. And the shipping industry is no different, though it is conservative. It's a conservative industry, and it's been sort of reluctant to let go of the paper documents. Not just because it's conservative, but also because these are documents of title, right? So the paper means something. It's like money, like dollar bills, right? The value is intrinsic. If you have that piece of paper, you own something. So putting that into computer systems and being afraid of bugs and crashes and viruses and so forth has sort of hindered the progress of this industry into digitization. And WaveBL has been able to, with some other companies, has been able to sort of take that step forward using very interesting technology, which is called blockchain technology, in order to transfer these very important trade documents into the digital realm, allow them to be digitized, make these processes quick and safe, and can leverage this technology to help the industry make this transition.
You mentioned this has been talked about for a long time. I remember reading about the need to digitize this. I want to think it was 25 or 30 years ago. I could be wrong. So it's amazing it's taken so long for this to happen. But like you say, the industry, especially ocean container shipping, they're very slow to move on new technologies. So Uriel, when we think about this, how would blockchain? So that's one other topic we probably should have. We should get up front, since your solution uses blockchain. Blockchain's been around for a while, and I know that it's taken a while for companies to really start utilizing it. It's really great for making sure that the right people are in the transaction, and it records things that are involved in transactions, and nobody can change it. You have a record of what happened forever. And so there's a lot of benefits to using blockchain, and I'm aware of Walmart Canada uses it in their transportation. There's probably many others using it as well. But it has taken industry a while to adopt it.
Yes.
So you're talking about two technologies: one, digitizing the bill of lading, and blockchain. Of course, now the idea of digitizing the blockchain's been around. Digitizing the bills of lading has been around longer than the concept of blockchain. But you're using that as well. Would you mind describing how you're using that?
Sure. So like you said, the idea that we need to digitize trade documents and specifically the major trade document, which is the bill of lading, has been around for decades. I mean, it's been clear that, like other industries, in order to reach higher levels of security and quicker ways of transacting, this needs to be digitized. And it hasn't. So again, the industry has been a little bit reluctant to move forward because these are bills of title and this is a conservative industry. But then COVID happened. And COVID sort of changed things around. And we were there sort of with a almost mature technology just in time to sort of ride that wave. When COVID happened, you couldn't send, it was much more difficult to send paper via, couriers, FedEx or DHL, because there were less flights. People didn't go to offices, so you can fetch those papers. There were less actual delivery men. So the whole thing sort of broke down, and you can use paper documents anymore, or you could, but to a much lower frequency, which sort of halted the whole thing. And then people understood, okay, we need to move forward. We need to digitize if we want to keep doing business. And so the industry sort of jumped forward. And a lot of carriers sort of had internal initiatives to start implementing EBLs, and to this day, the main drive for this is coming from the ocean carriers. They've also they've set up the DCSA, which is a consortium that's promoting digitization in the industry, and they've actually set very ambitious goals. They want to be completely digital by 2030, which is quite ambitious, and I think it's achievable. So, having said that, in terms of blockchain, so what you want to do is you want to have these. You have all these documents, you have the EBL, but you have some other documents. And you want to be able to make them accessible digitally. So, and you can do that, right? We have the cloud, we have global internet services. You could just scan the document and place it on a server somewhere, and through the internet, everybody can reach it. So that's not complicated, but that leaves that leaves an opening for all those things that we try to avoid that I mentioned before. It could be stolen, it could be copied, fraudulent copies could be made, it could get lost, there could be a system crash, there could be some sort of cybersecurity attack. And all those things were quite scary to carriers that have sometimes tens of millions of dollars are being represented by a single piece of paper. So you don't want that thing to get lost. You need to have the maximum level of security, and this is where the founders of WaveBL, our founders, came into the picture. They said, "Look, we have a technology that can do this." They had deep technological knowledge, and they were doing a lot of work with blockchain. And they said this technology is a good fit for this, right? Because it was used for money, which are also used to be paper bills. And by that time, blockchain was out there in Bitcoin and in other types of currency for I think over 10 years, and it hadn't been nobody could tamper with it. Blockchain has this intrinsic capability because it's a distributed system, because there's a ledger, because a lot of people are involved, and you need a very high level of agreement between 80 or 90% of the entire population in order to make a change. That there's no one place, there's no one vulnerable place, one server attacked or that could go down and cause the entire system to be vulnerable. So this was a good fit for these very important documents of title, the bills of lading. And they put together a patented technology, a new type of technology that connects the bills of lading to blockchain tokens. And they started the company, and today we're the market leader.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So which industries or players in the supply chain are most aggressive about adopting? Which parts of the supply chain are maybe the challenges to get to adopt this? Would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Of course. So our partners in this sort of journey into digitizing global trade. So our partners are the carriers, right? So the carriers, you have something like 100 carriers globally, but top 10. So it's somewhat of a centralized industry. The top 10 do a large portion of maritime shipping, and we are very lucky to have partnered with 4 of the top 10 ocean liners, and we're of course looking to partner with more. They are the true engine behind this transition. The carriers are the ones that issue the bills of lading once they receive the merchandise and onboard them onto the ships, and they are the ones to whom the bill of lading is surrendered once they reach the port of destination. So they're they're the hub of this operation, and we are working very closely with them. I as the chief product officer of WaveBL, have biweekly conversations with the product teams of each of these carriers, and we brainstorm and we think about new features. So this is a very close relationship, and I'm very thankful for that. And they show a true enthusiasm about moving this forward and becoming and making this industry become completely digitized. The other players here are the shippers and the consignees who receive the shipments. So here you have different motivations. So the shippers are mostly happy to onboard on our system and receive the bills of lading through our system instead of having them sent to them in paper form. We have a lot of customers who are shippers. We have a lot of customers who are freight forwarders who actually do the shipping procedures on behalf of the shippers. So the motivation there is high, and they're willing to do this. They're willing to move over from paper to EBLs for the benefits that we can offer them. So it's more secure, it's safe, it arrives much quicker, it's easier to manage. I think the ones where we have the most explaining to do, or we need to put a lot of effort into onboarding, are the consignees, and for good reason. They're receiving the shipment, they want to release it, they have the least interest in working with a new type of system. They don't care if usually they don't care if they receive the documentation one way or another. And since they're working with multiple shippers, sometimes they're afraid of having to work with multiple systems in order to receive the bills of lading, and they just revert back to paper. And we've been dealing with that for a while, and we've put together what we think is an interesting solution for this. We've released a feature just last month that we call Quick Wave, which allows consignees to be able to receive our electronic bills of lading without having to onboard the system. So they receive an email with a link, they click the link, they agree to the terms and conditions, and they immediately get a copy of the bill of lading. So we solved that problem by not making them onboard on the system, making the interaction for them as easy as possible. And we think that will allow us to work with a much wider array of consignees.
So, Uriel, looking to the future, when you think about additional functionality and capabilities that might be needed down the road, what are some things you're thinking of at this point?
Yeah, so EBLs are just, well, the EBL is the most important sort of the core of the maritime shipments, but there are a lot of other documents that come along with it. You mentioned letters of credit. So when you do a transaction with letters of credit, usually the banks are very meticulous about when they can release the funds and so forth. So they put together a list of all the necessary documentation, and they go through it to make sure that they have everything in place. So you would have a lot of documents, so ancillary additional documents that are necessary, especially for transactions where you have financial institutions. You would have packing lists that need to be verified, and you would have commercial invoices for the transaction. You might have you might need to show special certificates that are issued by regulatory bodies, like certificates of origin or veterinary certificates if you're talking about livestock or foodstuffs, phytosanitary certificates, all sorts of different certifications. And some of these already, you can send them by email. They've been digitized to a degree. Some of them have not and are still being issued by regulatory bodies, and you need to print out a copy and go to the customs office or do things which are still in a very manual fashion. So we are now we're going to expand our platform in order to facilitate our customers being able to ship the entire document sets with us. So to send the entire document set with us, we're calling it the digital document pouch. It's a collection of electronic documents in one digital pouch that will allow you to put those documents together with the EBL in digital form, certified and authenticated by our blockchain, so to make sure that these are original documents, and to transfer them along with the EBL to the either the consignee or regulatory bodies on the port of destination, customs, tax authorities, and so forth. So we're in the transition now, going from being focused on EBLs to becoming what essentially will be a digital document trade management system, which is what we're aiming for in the next few years.
Uriel, the maritime industry, and I've seen this a lot lately, maybe coincidentally, but it seems like the maritime industry is spending a lot of time talking about sustainability and issues around that. What are some ways that the WaveBL platform helps the industry from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, so you have to remember that this is green. So digitization means less paper, right? It's a green technology. And this is becoming more and more important. We're seeing our customers and partners in Europe and the US talk a lot about ESG and becoming more biosustainable, offsetting carbon footprints and so forth. And we've been saying that from the get-go. If you have to set, so the statistics I saw is that there are 45 million pages of trade documents being printed every year. So you have the paper, you have to produce the paper. You have to send the paper, presumably with an air courier to the port of destination. And each transatlantic flight means hundreds of thousands of pounds of CO2 emissions. And then you need to dispose of that paper somehow. So digitization, be it in this industry or other industries, is a move towards a greener, more sustainable technology. And this year, we're actually going to be partnering with some companies or bodies that are promoting green and sustainable technology globally to make sure that our customers understand that a move towards EBLs is a move towards a more sustainable way of doing business. So absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest obstacles in your mind of wider adoption of electronic solutions in the maritime industry over the next few years?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So usually when we talk to customers, potential customers, the move seems to be like a no-brainer, right? It's quicker, it's safer, it's good for the environment. Let's do it. And when we talk to the management and the digital departments, they're usually very enthusiastic. And sometimes the process slows down when you get to the actual people on the ground. So the clerks, the dispatch officers, the actual people who send the documents and receive them and process them. And the reason for that is twofold. First of all, I think they're human and they're used to doing things in a certain way, and they've already have their set ways of doing things. And sometimes I've seen this, although it's, I think, very there's no cause for this. It's unsubstantiated, but people fear that digitization and new technologies might impact their jobs. Right? They think that if things become much more computerized, there might be a cut down on the workforce or something like that, which I haven't seen that happen, but I understand why people might fear that. So we're trying to reach out. We're making an extra effort on reaching out to people who actually transact, actually work with these documents, not just the management levels, not just the digital departments. Explain the actual benefits of this technology, showing that making things easier makes them more productive, makes them be able to do more each single day, makes them be able to not have things get lost, or if a bill of lading, for paper bill of lading gets lost, you need to ask for a new one, and then you need to wait for it to be sent over, and then you have to pay for warehouse costs until you can release the merchandise. So in a mistake like that could cost somebody their job. But if you have a system that's very well managed, organized, digitized, and you have everything on the list, there's much less room for error, and things are managed in a much more efficient way, and you have more time to think about things which are, top of mind, like making your work more efficient. So we're reaching out to the people who are working with the documentation. We're trying to demo the system as much as we can. We have sessions where we have tens, sometimes even hundreds of actual employees that work with the system on a daily basis, and we show them the benefits. We also show them, as the product department, we show them what's going to be added to the system soon, so which features they'll be able to benefit from in the coming months. And I think that increasing that communication has been very useful for us, and is going to be useful moving forward.
Uriel, would you mind sharing with me a little bit about the volume of transactions that you're dealing with, and also the partners you're working with to move this forward?
Absolutely. So we are very fortunate to have customers in over 130 companies worldwide, which is, I think, a very good number for a company that's basically, we're just 7 years old. So we've been able to extend our reach and serve customers in a very wide array of countries, different languages, different cultures, different ways of doing business. Up until now, we have issued, so we have a counter, you can take a look at it on our website. We have issued just over 500,000 bills of lading, which means, since we've been growing, which means that now we're up to a few 100,000 per year, and still growing very rapidly. So we're very happy with that. We're very happy with customer adoption. And yet you have to bear in mind that even today, the percentage of adoption of EBLs is a single percent. It's just say it's like 2 or 3%. It's a single digit, and the rest of the bills of lading are still in paper form. So we have a long ways to go. There are tens of millions of bills of lading issued every year, and I think they all should be in digital form. It's safer, it's quicker. Like we mentioned before, it's much more, it's greener, it's more sustainable. So there's no reason not to do this, especially having proven that this technology works over the past few years, and having done this for the largest carriers, ocean liner. Number one ocean liner right now is MSC, and we're very proud to have them as a partner. And we've been working with them for several years. And those EBLs have been sent all over the world, and we've been very happy to serve these customers. And I think we've done this with a high degree of success. So there are no foreseeable technological or methodological barriers that this industry can and should go digital. Definitely. In terms of partners, so this year is going to be, as the chief product officer for WaveBL, my team and I are going to be focused to a very high degree this year on partnering with various industry partners and extending our offering. So we've recently announced that we're going to be working with Team Top, and we're going to be working with Temenos, which is a company that services banks and financial institutions. They're the leader in their field, and we are going to work with them in order to streamline the process of letters of credit and provide the documentation for the letter of credit procedure. It's called a presentation. When they do it in the bank, they sort of look through all the documents. We're going to be providing them with the digital documents online through our system, so there's no need for paper documents to be sent. We're going to be cutting down the time for the average time for a letter of credit, I believe, is 8 days. We're going to be helping them cut that down very significantly. And we have a similar process in the works with SureComp, which is another company that has been very successful in providing banks with software services. And there are additional players in the industry that we're going to be working with in order to make sure that maritime shipping is as efficient and as digital as it can be. And I believe there's a lot of work to be done here. We can make a lot of improvements.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to visit with me today. I really appreciate it. If you're finding value in this podcast, we greatly appreciate your support by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Additionally, following us on Apple and Spotify and leaving up to a 5-star review would be immensely helpful. We welcome any feedback or questions related to the podcast, as well as suggestions for further topics and guests. You can leave your comments on our YouTube channel, and rest assured that I will read each and every one of them. Please also take a moment to check out our podcast sponsors, as they play a critical role in keeping this podcast running. For more information on specific topics, timestamps, or links to articles mentioned during the podcast, head over to mattwallerpodcast.com.